Welcome to the Spiritual Roundtable, where we're about to break down, discuss, unpack, and challenge pretty much anything spiritual. Together, we're going to embark on a journey of unlocking spiritual potential through a ton of things like healing, balance, oneness, devil's advocate, and so much more. We always promise to give you what you need and only sometimes what you want. I'm your host, Erika M, child of balance, and here with me, my co-host, is Miss Erin M, Keys of Wisdom 369. Alright, today we're talking about labels and limits. And it might just change your outlook on how you view spirituality.
One of my favorite quotes by Alan Watts is, "Waking up to who you are requires letting go of who you imagine yourself to be." And I love that quote because it's only underneath the labels that we discover who we truly are. And, labels are what limit our potential. And they're the ways that we tend to compartmentalize situations or behaviors. And for me, I believe that, labels specifically go hand in hand with that idea of expectation. And we all know what I say about expectations, that they tend to be in the eye of the beholder and aren't necessarily something that we agree to. And this within itself can lead to an imbalance in the formation of wounds in our life that we don't even realize because of our need to label everything.
I actually really love that quote, to be 1,000% honest. I don't necessarily know if I've ever heard it phrased like that. I know that I phrase it my own way, and people who watch our shit, they definitely know that we say the same ness, but just in a different tone. But there's just something to lend to the idea that labels are our like human connection. They're our humanness. But because our humanness is finite, and because there's only so much that this vessel can do before it taps out, when we overuse labels, we also instill upon ourselves and others the limit of those labels, what things can only be. When you label something, you're defining it in a sense of what it can be and what it definitely freaking can't be. Like, absolutely not can't be. So when you start trying to fit things together and make sense of them, every time you say, like, let's say, I'm a doctor, and that's your label. Well, if you're a doctor, what you can't be is a trash man. That doesn't fit in that label. That limits you to the potential of being something other than that label. The label is a box, and that's where you end up placing yourself. It either fits in the construct of the label or it doesn't. And when you own that stuff and you be like, I'm this, and you say it with that oomph, that chest, your humanness, right? This is who I am. This is the limit. You're giving yourself those limits. And when they become self imposed, is when you start having and running into some problems, especially when it comes to spirituality.
I love how you went straight from labels into the construct of how that ties into limits. And I kind of wanted to go backwards to go forwards for a second, because I know we were defining labels, but I want to go into the etymology of the word limit, because there's a part of that etymology that my brain just kind of did a thing with. But limit from etymology standpoint is about being a boundary, a frontier, a border, some kind of restriction. But my favorite was the embankment between fields. And I know that most people would think of embankment, like the grassy knoll or something like that. But to me, it took my brain directly to energetic fields. And when I say that, it's because once you define who or what you are with a label, you're literally taking endless possibilities, or what we tend to call timelines, right off the table. And it's like you were saying, it's that humanness in us, that human duality that tends to want to label, divide, and break the world into these little pieces, but specifically with labels, breaking the world into opposites: the good, the bad, the right, the wrong. And a lot of times this tends to be a reaction to almost the negative experiences or negative behavior that we encounter on our path. And when you talk about it energetically, you know, it's rooted in things like fear and failure and judgment. And those things are of a what? They're of a lesser, denser frequency, which again ties back into the humanness of things. Because labels by themselves really just reflect how people think about themselves and others.
I just think it's really important, like, to really emphasize this part too, because just the way that the etymology breaks down for limits. And when we talk about energy, like, I had somebody drill this into my head during key moments in my journey and my growth and healing and involvement. And this is also really important for everybody listening, is the fact that we are at our core, when it comes to energy, we are a limitless being. We have zero energetic limits. Zero. We are spirit in a vessel. We are not the vessel itself. So when we start internalizing, identifying with labels, and labels are in turn their own limit. When you're talking about taking all the possibilities in the world that you're open to, that your energy jives with, anything that has the potential, your free will, your freedom to will anything, you then limit that. You take away all those options. And when we talk about energy, like you just said, timelines, every possible outcome is a separate timeline. And we always say, like, it's what you feed. Well, if I give you five, we're going to make this super simple. If I give you five timelines, and then with your label eliminates two timelines because of the way that you label things, the construct you put them in, the way you identify with those labels, the way you own those labels, owning those limits, you've now just taken two out of five off the table for you to manifest, for you to align with, for you to reach, for you to choose from. And then let's say that label and the domino effect. That label causes you to identify with another label, another construct, taking one more timeline off the table. Now you only have two. You don't have five, now you have two. And then let's keep going, because the nature of labels, the nature of ego, it feeds itself. So
Yeah.
then we're looking for the next one. Then we're looking for, and now we're in a rat race, and we're limiting, we're narrowing down our field of possibilities into a denser human construct, like you said, into a denser energy, into a limiting, restrictive energy, to where it can only be this and nothing else. And that's danger and limits. Never for a second forget, and I will continue to preface this, it's one of the hugest parts of what we teach here. You are a limitless being. Your energy at its core, at its essence, is limitless.
Don't kill me here, because I'm going to have you talk about something, because I'm listening to you here and it's taking me to things I've just heard you say throughout the past week or so. And the way
Okay.
you're talking about, things being restricted, when we double down in our labels and our
Mhm.
beliefs and our constructs. You've also been, helping people and bringing this awareness to what it's like to let go of those labels, right? Let the 3D kind of flow and pass you by to allow those endless possibilities to open up. But the way you explain it, I could never do justice. So that's why I said I kind of was just going to throw you on the spot again, because as I was listening to you say all that, it literally just took me back to things that you've been sharing with people to help them understand how to actually let go of those. And you just have such a way with words when you break down that 3D and that 5D. And so, like, spotlights on you, B, because like I said, while we're in the construct of labels, I also know people are probably sitting there and they're like, okay, but this is easier said than done. Like, labels are such a deep part of our conditioning, and it's the tiny child conditioning, the teenage conditioning, and then here we are, these adults, and it's like these things have just become ingrained to us. Where do we even start? And we're always telling people we got to let go, you got to surrender, you got to change this. But I just need you to break that down for people on here, because like I said, the way you do it is a way so many people understand.
Well, so we'll do, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Why not? So it's just I guess the way that the easiest way to kind of look at things just from a release standpoint, because I feel like that's really what you're highlighting, that release and that
Yes.
okay with just allowing things to be without the box needed, right? Um, when we look at the 3D and then we look at our denseness and the 3D ripple, so to speak, the things that we watch, you'll hear people say they're our reflection. It's, it's us being shown back to us. We're looking at a mirror, like all of these quote unquote trigger words, keywords, and those are all great. But what they're really saying is the ripple of energy. So energy, the subtle energy moves quicker than the speed of light. And that's why you can normally not see it, and its quantities can't be measured, but its effects can be measured. The product of subtle energy can be measured, it can be quantified, it can be studied, it can be diagnosed. Fantastic. So when you're up in level 4,000, God frequency, all the way up there, subtle energy, astral, the etherical planes, right? The really fast paced energy, which is where your manifestations start, which is where your timeline starts. That's the as above, so below, when it's translated in the modern day stuff. Like, great. Let's not get too crazy here. Because me, do I could break it all the way down and we can have a whole separate episode in an episode. But like it's one of those things to where it's like when it comes down to our density, and the human plane is one of the densest energies that more often than not you will not only live in but come into contact with. So one, etherical, really light, less dense, moves very quickly. The human world, the 3D, the physical plane, the tangible, touchable things are one of the densest. Now, if you have the ability, yeah, you could tap into even denser energies, right? And entities. And okay, great. We're not talking about that. Stay focused. So we're talking about we're talking about the physical, right? So because it happens slowest, it happens last. So that means when you're experiencing things as energy in a vessel, things will start in the upper realms, the upper planes, the upper whatever. It's like dropping a drop into a bowl of water. You'll see it hit in the center and then the slow ripple outwards. The 3D is the last thing before it falls off of your existence, before it falls out of your reality, before it falls out of your realm of involvement. So a lot of times people will be like, but I did all these things and I did all this work and I this, and then they end up reacting off the 3D because it's slower than
Yep.
everything else. If you did the inner work, congratulations, then it's done. That's that knowing, it's done. If you have the realization knowing that the 3D moves slower, then it's going to take a little bit longer for the effects to find their way into the denser energy because the ripple's the slowest. So when the 3D comes by, it's being rooted in something greater than the density, being rooted in your spirit, being rooted in your soul, in the knowing that I already did this. I let this go. I released it. I healed it. I'm trying to be positive. I'm over here. Trying is the literally it's the action of doing. Like, so when you're trying, you're doing, nothing in between. So when we start talking about all of these ideas of people getting triggered by the 3D and triggered by, well, why isn't my reality? And I must be in a bad timeline. And then they start undoing everything that they just put in place in a higher vibration, in a higher frequency, in a higher realm, in a higher knowing, in a soul perspective. So a lot of that releasing is just not reacting to it. And you know what? The throat chakra is a powerful thing. The throat chakra is a powerful energy, and it's one of the more powerful energies we're given that is tied with our physical vessel. So speak it. I don't align with this. You're damn right you don't. And then let it go. It's when we jump on the bandwagon, we feed the energy, we jump into it, we grab a hold of it, and we keep it going in our physical, that we're basically telling the universe in the 3D that this is what we align with when we feed things. So if it doesn't align with you, That's part of the letting it go, is the not reacting to the 3D ripple. And it's super easy to be like, don't react. But it's more that, step back, and it's more that detachment. It's the
Yeah.
not taking shit personal and realizing that that's already on its way out if it made it to the 3D. That's the last step, B. Like, that's the last thing. So if it
Mhm.
needs just one more piece of toilet paper to be flushed down the toilet, then let it go. Like, but it's when we start panicking and when we start reacting and when we're not detached and when we feel attacked and when we this and that's just where that release comes, and just realizing that everything other than observation, detachment, knowing, and seated in that soul is a seed of doubt. It might even be fear. It might be a self judgment. Like, all of those things are exactly what you're telling yourself you don't align with. But then when you react to it, you're actually showing the universe through your actions that you do. And that's when you get stuck in those cycles. So as far as release, it's just the knowing that the 3D is the last piece of shit you're going to have to deal with. It's the last thing you're going to have to put up with. If you've already done it in astral, if you've already done it in your healing, if you've done it in your shadow, if you've done it in your soul, if you've done it in, fantastic. Well, then you can do it in the 3D too. It's your last test. And just think of it as nothing else. It's already happened, because the 3D is the past, because it moves so slow. So when we're talking about possibilities and timelines and busting shit wide the fuck open, when you react off the 3D, you're living in the past, because it happens last. And I'm getting goosebumps because it happens
There it
last,
is.
and it's already happened for you somewhere else.
But see, this is exactly why I had to put you on the spot. I'm sorry. I know you did not know that was coming because that was kind of like a blind side. But I'm like I said, the more you were talking, the more I'm like, but I hear this so often. That's why I wanted you to do that, because
Right.
so many people don't realize just how you said it, that the 3D is it on its way out.
Yep.
And when you know that you've done the inner work, you've done the healing, you've done it in astral, or you've done it somewhere else, it is just rippling down. What some people don't understand is like there can still be things that you'll see in your quote unquote reality in your timeline. But you also have to ask yourself, when you take away the labels and you take away the limits, right? What
Hmm.
also do you have? You have the ability to see it all. You then have the ability to see all these different things kind of playing out in tandem. And that is part of the beauty of sitting in that void, in that I'm everything, but I am nothing construct. Because just because you can see it, or you can understand it, a perspective of it, or this or that, does not mean that you're saying, I identify with this. This is a piece and part of who I am. But I loved how you said that, because I think people try so hard to deconstruct things, and their constructs, their conditionings, their this and their that. And they get frustrated, like you said, and they almost like unintentionally counter the universe energetically, and jump back or fall back or backslide or tap dance into an older way of doing things, not realizing that things are just on its way out. And as long as you're in that present moment, that knowing is enough. It is
Right.
that falling away of the unbalanced ego, because again, we always talk about it, our ego is a very important part of us. It's our humanness. But
Yep.
it's that unbalanced part that sometimes fights for the, but I'm so used to the label, I'm so used to the good or bad, the indifferent, the peace, the in between, as we call it sometimes. Like that in between can be a tough place to sit because it's really uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean that anything's wrong.
And then, just like, I know that you were tying in the ego there, and that's just a really large part, because you stated before, you know what I mean, the ego is rooted in a lot of things, and those things aren't necessarily who you actually are.
Facts.
Now, a word from our sponsors. If you are looking for a one-stop shop for all things spiritual, check out the website www.childobalance.com. We opened up a Get 5, Give 5 program, and it's all for referring friends and family. We know you guys do it. We want to say thank you because we are always seeing you send your trusted people our way. So visit the website and figure out how you can not only get $5 for doing it, but give $5 to your bestie. Visit www.childobalance.com. There's no end date. We're just launching it now to say thank you. So if you want a one-stop shop for private spaces, spiritual guidance and assistance, mediumship, mentorship, private readings, shadow work assistance, it's all there. If you are looking for a free tree of knowledge where you can learn esoteric wisdoms, breath work, you can learn about yourself, cultures, spiritual hygiene, spiritual practices, spiritual traditions, and you can just learn about almost anything under the sun spiritual for 100% free, check out the website. And you should become a member. If you're not already a member, www.childobalance.com. It's 100% free. It'll never cost you money. We would never charge you money. The website is about assistance and community. Take advantage of it, fam. It's a great place to go to unlock your spiritual potential. www.childobalance.com. Okay. So I know we went on a tangent, even though it was super important. And I'm glad we went there because I do agree with you, dude. Like, a lot of people struggle with that, realizing what they view in the 3D isn't actually reality. It's the past, even though it's our reality and it's the reality of the vessel. It's not actually always the present. You're actually watching sometimes the past play out. And that's where discernment comes in. But getting back to the idea of judgment and what you pulled on, and kind of a little bit of that fear and that need to analyze and that kind of stuff. The way that I teach it, and take it or leave it, but the way that I teach it is I always tell people to have a working definition. Have a definition that works for you, aka a loose understanding. And I mean loose in that you understand it, comprehend it with your brain, but then you also internally understand it with your soul. And that is important. But the fact that it's a working definition, and you've heard me say it a ton of times, a working definition, allow yourself to be open-minded enough and accepting and open to new experiences, new ideas, new constructs, new labels, even, to where you're okay editing, changing, expanding your understanding of things. A lot of times I feel like, and I don't know if we've said this already, but a lot of times I feel like people understand things under the weight of their brain instead of understanding things with the soul. And the brain, the mind, is the ego. It is the facade. It is the need to weigh and measure. It is all of those things that we've already talked about. So when we're talking about the need to over complexify and overdo it and make sure, and we can rationalize, and to the point where it's like a hindrance and it leaves no flexibility and it leaves no flow, you're only understanding under the weight of your brain when you need to be understanding because you need your soul involved. Like, and we say this all the time, and it was taught to me, and it is something that I will forever carry on because it resonates and it makes 1,000% sense. And I know you hear me and Keith say it all the time. The Language of the universe is not English. It's not Russian. It's not Swahili. It's not any of that. It's energy. And some people
Wonderful.
even go further and say it's energy, frequency, and vibration. Perfect. None of that falls into the context of your label. None of it. So when you start thinking about titles for things, titles equals labels equals limits. So it's
Yes.
just a certain understanding of, like, I know there's gonna be somebody in the room like, but then how do we talk? How do we, like, okay, like, yes, there's a certain amount of labeling for comprehension that is 1,000% needed because we speak the English language. But it's when we start to kind of flip that switch almost from like keeping it for comprehension and so that people know what you're talking about, they understand what you're getting at, and then turning it to like adopting it as your identity and your whole, and failing to realize that it's a piece of you. It's not the whole thing. And that's when things start to tip the scale, because then you find yourself, instead of being like, I resonate with that, you go, I need to identify as that. And then you start finding ways to change yourself to fit the label. You're doing it in reverse. You find quote unquote comprehensible labels and titles that you go, damn, I resonate with that a little bit because XYZ. But at no point are you pressuring yourself to fulfill the title or label, because that's not the point you put it there. You put it there to be relatable. You put it there so people can understand what the frick you are and what you're talking about, because we communicate through words a lot. You know what I mean? When we're not doing the unseen communications, like, so that's when things start to tip the scale, is when we go from, I need to fit this label and nothing else, and this is who I am, and we identify, we adopt it, and we go, this is all I am. Ooh, pump your brakes, pump your brakes. Like, that's not all you are. That's a piece of who you are, and that's a piece of maybe who a piece of you are. Like, it's not even the whole thing.
No.
It may be part of, some of the things, but it ain't the whole pie. Like, that's like the corner piece of your birthday cake. That's not your whole thing. And that's just what's really important, is you can be way more than you give yourself credit for. But that's the battle of that ego. That's the battle of that mind who tells you, like, nope, that resonates. That's what we are. That's it. No further. And I need to know. I need to look no further. I found myself. No, we're going to back that bus up, Regina George. Like, we're just going to take an extra second. Yeah, just take an extra second. Like, because we've all been like, I jive with that, and we get carried away. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Like, but there's a large part to this that I think it'd be more helpful maybe with some examples. So we kind of picked a couple examples that we thought might help. So I know you guys hear me, if you've ever watched me on a live, people will ask me, like, what do I do? And I'll tell them I have mediumship abilities. That is my working definition. Instead of being like, I'm a medium, a boom, and then fulfilling that label to like level 40, to where I'm only a medium and I'm nothing else. A medium has the ability to feel into energy that's unseen, right? Pass on loved ones, dead people, dead animals, things that are not in our physical plane of existence, still housed in a vessel. But if you have that ability to have your feelers that precise, feeling beyond the realm of the visible into the invisible, your feelers can not only just feel into that one dead person, that one dead dog, that one dead bird, it has the potential to feel into everything beyond the realm of the veil. So sometimes the idea of medium, or just, insert whatever spiritual label we want, but the idea of like medium puts you in the box of, I talk to dead people. This is what I do. This is all that I do. No, it you lose your nest. And then people get stuck where they go, but I don't do it like everybody else, or I have to do it this way because this is how other mediums do it. That's that judgment that Keys was talking about. That's that weigh and measure that we were talking about before. That's that limiting yourself to how you do it. We call it your ness over here, baby. That's limiting yourself into what your actual oomph, bada boom is. And there's
Yes.
just a large part to that that you're shooting yourself in the foot and you're doing your soul when it comes to your nest, your energy a disservice because you're shutting off possibilities for your feelers to tap into, touch into, to do. But we also have the human understanding that if I go, I can feel everything. People are going to ask the question, what do you mean? So being like, oh, I have mediumship abilities, it's the label of I'm a medium and I can talk to dead people. And that's that easily translatable, like when we talk about for comprehension, labels are needed. It's because if I walk up to someone and go, I'm a medium, and they know what the term medium, they'll go, oh, okay. But you're not limiting yourself because I'm not saying that I need to fit the ideal, the prescribed, the collective label that is this, and I must wear it and adopt it to a T. It allows your nest, your energy, your person to be just as flexible and just as free as your soul would like to be. But it still makes you relatable, still makes you understandable to the normal Joe Schmo who asks you, what the hell do you do? And that's just one of the examples that you hear me say all the time.
I love that you gave that example, and I'm gonna throw a couple in here because that just led me to think of something else. But in the spiritual journey, in the spiritual community, it's the same way that, like you gave that example of saying you have mediumship abilities, right?
Yep.
We don't label and box ourselves by saying, when it comes to like our reading abilities, right? We're
Mhm.
not like, oh, we're just a tarot reader, right? If you guys know us and you've been in our rooms or you've been in a dual life, we do intuitive reads, right? Because we understand that we're more than just that. We understand and understand that we have a unique way of doing what we do, and we're not here to compare, or like you said, we're not sitting in a space of, well, if I don't do it this way and I don't call it this, then I have failed the assignment. That's
Right.
something that, when we started all this, we were really, I want to say, really aware of when we did it. But when you said it about abilities, when people want to talk about their abilities and their this and their that, don't box yourself into I'm just this. Oh, well, I just have a knowing, or I'm Claire this, or I it's the same concept. You have developed, or you have an awareness of something that is a strength for you in that present moment, right?
Yep.
Don't box yourself or cut yourself off from the energy of tapping in to the abilities, or like you said, the subtle energies, or all the available energy that you have to harness.
Well, okay. So since you went there, let's go
Sorry,
there.
I went there,
No,
and then
it's fine. Like,
I'll
since you
loop
go
my way
there,
back.
girl, let's go there. Let's do it, dude. So when you said natural, so the way that I always explain it is it's your natural innate ability. That's
Yeah.
usually the one that comes online for you in one way or another without a whole lot of prep, practice, or anything in the beginning. It's usually the one that scares the shit out of you the most. But it's also usually your most developed. So when you're talking about the natural things that you do, it's not that you can't do anything else. You've spent lifetimes doing that. It is. You landed here and that one's developed. Think of it like a muscle. You ripped arm day. Leg day, you kind of sucked on. So your legs need some work, but your arms are ripped. Like if you were doing calendars from the waist up, you'd be good. Like, and it's that kind of idea. It's that kind of idea of being like, it's just the one thing that you're innately good at, that is innately trained to a certain level, but it doesn't mean that's the only thing your muscles can do. And that's where it's just changing that perspective. And sometimes when we go, well, like you said, like I'm a clairaudient, I'm a medium, I only read tarot cards, I only do this. You're limiting yourself. And every time you speak something, you are telling over 1 trillion cells in your body that this is what is the truth. And you're impressing and oppressing that kind of stuff on yourself. That's why affirmations work too. Your body's always listening. Your energy is always listening. The universe is always listening. Every cell is always listening to the energy behind the words that you speak. And that's where it's really important to not own shit that limits you.
And that takes me into wanting to delve into another label in spirituality. You've been talking about the importance of, words, frequency, energy, vibration, and not limiting yourself. I often hear people refer to themselves as the curse breakers or the black sheep and the this and the that. And I know that what they mean, like this liberation, this freedom, this being the one who's doing things differently for their family, for their bloodline, right?
Ego.
But you gotta toe the line there, because you can get yourself far into the energy of ego because you think you're better than. You don't realize that you're actually putting out that energy of everything I encounter is of some kind of adversarial nature. I am innately born to struggle. I am innately born into opposition. And when you continue to speak that kind of energy, those words into existence, you're then attracting these things, into your, like you said, into your physical reality. They're all rippling in, all because of a label or title that you've given yourself, and not necessarily meaning for it to come in a disempowering way, right? Because that's the thing, labels, like, within themselves can be very disempowering. And when we're on this spiritual journey, we're always talking about, taking our power back, doing these healing things for self, for, for our children, for this and that. But like I said, then it kind of circles back into the, if you get too much self-importance, then you're in that ego.
Now, a word from our sponsors. If you are looking for a one-stop shop for all things spiritual, check out the website, www.childobalance.com. For those of you who truly appreciate handmade products, we have a handmade shop. Everything is made to order, blessed, saged, and sent out as quick as possible. We have anything from handmade sounds for meditation to chakra chain macrames to tree of life macrames with inlaid crystals to herbal blends like bath teas and dump and go specials to road opener mixes to kits and oils and so much more. For those of you who enjoy taking spiritual classes and courses but maybe can't fit it into your busy schedule, we have self-study courses, and everything can be found in the handmade shop. The website is about assistance and community. Take advantage of it, fam. It's a great place to go to unlock your spiritual potential. www.childobalance.com. Well, and I have so much you picked like the best one. I have so much I want to say right now. There's a large part to it that I want to humble some people with this quote, because I absolutely love this quote because it's humbling in nature. Like, I was humbled by it when I first stumbled upon it, and it's just like this. We're just going to get into it. Just because they didn't break all of the curses doesn't mean they didn't break any.
Yes.
And that's from your ancestors, because there are curses that they broke that were large for them at the time that you never had to deal with. And I'm getting goosebumps again. That was large that you never had to deal with. You had no awareness of, that ran through the family because it ran through the family until it got to them, and then it ran no more. And I'm going to be even more on top of it. When we're talking about generational curses, you really have to be careful where you're placing your attention, because with that idea of generational curse breaker, you are saying that that's the only thing you're here to do. I'm here to clean. I've heard this so many times. I'm here to clean up my lineage. And that's what you choose to make your whole existence. By you switching that and being like, I'm here to be authentic and I'm here to resonate in my authenticity, knowing that your authenticity it will trigger your lineage, will trigger your ancestors, will trigger your relatives, will trigger the family you were dropped into because that's the purpose. You will innately break generational curses every time you choose something different that you weren't brought up in, that you weren't taught. And I feel like sometimes we over glorify that curse breaker because people want to think about really big ones like alcohol abuse, drug abuse, bad relationships. They want to think about these larger than life ones where people have been just repressed. But there's a lot of like little curses. There's a lot of like little ones. And there was a trend going around a long time ago, which I loved. And they were like, tell me a small generational curse that you broke that just doesn't seem that important, but it's a big deal. And somebody was like having book fair money, doing this. And it was like all these little stuff, like eating at the dinner table. And it was like putting the TV off. And it was like all this other little stuff saying I love you to your
Yep.
kids. Like there are, I'm getting so much goosebumps. My hair is standing straight up. There is so much to that, that it's like you innately being you is breaking curses. But sometimes when you just said the ego wants us to make it a larger than life title, which we fulfill. So we feel fulfilled. That is the tricky circle cycle. We want a larger than life thing to fulfill. So we feel fulfilled. That's trickery. That's the mind's trickery of ego to keep you chasing that. Everybody at some point breaks a generational curse. I'm going to say it. I said it. Boom. There it is. Everybody at some point breaks a generational curse.
Yes.
Like you do it by existing because things fall out of fashion, things don't jive with you. And especially if you feel like you're the oddball in your family to where it's like, I'm just a little bit different than everybody. Some people call them black sheep, like you said before, like the one on kind of the outs. You just pumping blood through your veins with a heartbeat is doing so much for your lineage that you don't actually need to do any one task. You don't need to go on some shamanic journey that you deal with the heart chakra in your by you doing all those things. You're doing that for yourself, and that's how you break generational curses. You do it for you. And then
Yes.
what you radiate outward, what you teach, what you pass on, what you lead by example is what cleans up the lineage. When people talk about even karma, I don't know where I'm going here, but when people talk about karma too, ancestral karma, and you have to go through this because this is what happened. Now, that's a construct, and that is definitely a traditional belief at some point, depending on your culture. But when
Mm-hmm.
you really step back, you're going through the karma, you're going through the lesson, you're going through the thing. So you break it. You're going through it. So you learn. So you break it. It's not punishment, honey bunch. It's because you're the person with the energy who's going to figure it out. They're just saying that you're the soul to figure it out because the other ones figured out other stuff and this one's yours. It's like spreading the pie around and being like, this is your chunk of the pizza to deal with. We got the other chunks. And that's what that humbleness comes from. Just because they didn't break all of them doesn't mean they didn't break any. The reason you can sit here, and I'm getting goosebumps again, so someone's ancestors are on this. The reason that you are sitting here breaking what you think you're breaking and turning things around is because they broke what they did before you. That's that domino effect. Like,
That's
I
that
don't know how
ripple.
you feel about that.
No, but that's that ripple. That is truly that ripple. That's where the humbleness and the gratitude has to come in, right? That's
Yes.
where you have to
so not only purposefully, but perfectly. Because that's the thing. If you are standing in a space where you are superior and you're doing this, and nobody else in your bloodline, your lineage can do what you're doing, you are literally sitting in an energy where you are shitting over
your own lineage for things that they have already done that you will never have to face. You will never
And
have to face. They don't have to be in your awareness. None of it, because somebody else or somebody, multiple somebodies already completed that assignment.
well, and then when you think about it, it kind of sometimes gets you stuck with that one in particular. It gets you stuck on focusing so heavily, all your attention on your past lineages. And then those are the same people that will preach to stay present.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between staying present and changing the way things happen and, staying present and making different choices and decisions. But I know so many people when they come to us, and I've worked with a few, like, you know what I mean, who will talk about, I'm just really trying to stay present because I'm like, I'm going back in the past and I've actually heard that I'm liberating my lineage from this. And they spend so much time diving deep into past lives, past existence, and you're becoming so disconnected from breaking it here. There's nothing wrong with going back, but you go back to pull it forward. You don't go back to keep going back and back and back and back and back. You got to pull forward. You have to integrate. You have to bring it. You have to connect it. You have to bridge the gap. Like, so sometimes that kind of gets us lost. And I feel like this is probably going to be the last one that I have, but I think this one's just really perfect. So I hear it all the time when it comes to titles and labels as a limit, and it's starseed. I can't tell you how many people come up and they're like, I'm a starseed. I can respect that because, yeah, I would lie if I tell you that it doesn't resonate with me on a certain construct that, like, we not from here. Yeah, I get it. But sometimes people over own is the way that I want to say that understanding. And that's the way I'm going to say it. They over own that understanding so much so to they're not focused on why they're here, but they're focused on where they came from. And they're focused on the title and what their place is and what important line of people, what important planet or species, even depending on how you want to like talk about maybe cultural differences within the star seeds within themselves. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
Lyrian, if I'm this, if I'm like right, like all these different like, I don't know, Anunnaki, Mintanka, whatever, like all these like way back stuff to where it's like you're forgetting though that you're here. You were landed here to do some shit because your energy, what you bring to the table, changes things. Your ness changes things. So sometimes when we focus more on the title and who I am, right? Like who the piece of you is, because this isn't your first landing. I can promise you this probably isn't your first go around. You've probably been doing this different cultures, different places, different faces, different vessels over and over and over again. And some of them may not have been on this planet. So if you're talking about that, like Starseed's just one of them. It's just one of your beginnings, just one of your humble bringings, just one of your this. But sometimes when we focus so heavily on that title of importance to be like, I'm so cool, this, and I remember, and that's all great, but that's a piece. That's a piece of you. But the question is, if you were meant to just be that starseed, you would be over there. You wouldn't be here. So there's a reason you were placed freaking here. There's a reason you chose to be here. And sometimes you limit yourself to how awesome you were from where I came from. That you're forgetting that, yeah, you came from over there because you were sent here. If you want to go with the mission standpoint, you were sent here on a mission. Like you were supposed to do something. It's not about, and like you just said this, but it's like, it's not about owning any one thing. It's about embracing
Mm-hmm.
all things. And there's a large part to like, it's great to know where you come from because maybe that gives you foundation. Maybe that resonates with your soul and it branches off and it opens up a possibility of knowledge, of wisdom, of feeling connected to ceremonies, rituals. Fantastic. But that's still a piece of your tool belt. It's not the whole tool belt. And that's where I think sometimes we get lost and people call them spiritual traps. People call them tangents. You just get lost kind of identifying in just that one thing. You forget you're bigger than that. And it's just like, I just feel like that's super important that you're bigger than just that one thing, you know?
But I love that was your example, because I know we could unpack examples all day long, right?
Oh yeah.
But the thing is, that's where people are at. You kind of got to check yourself, because the entire concept of that spiritual path, that spiritual journey is realizing that you're nothing and you're everything all at the same time. And when we talk in what our topic is today, these labels and these limits, right? At what point are we going to ask ourselves, the things that we're identifying with, these spiritual labels, just how much are they affecting our reality, right? Like that self-importance, that I'm going to judge like we said, the human duality of things. Our humanness is what gives it the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, the this and the that. So at some point, if this is what we're speaking out and this is the energy we're choosing to embody, right? At what point are we almost responsible for our own suffering in some standpoint because of the labels that some are hell-bent on using? At some point, that's going to lead to what? Another ego death, a dark night of the soul, whichever way you want to slice it, right? But I think at the end of the day, it's important to understand that on a basic level, yes, labels are necessary. But it's when the mind takes it to that next level of complexity, that we really have to check ourselves. Because it's in that next level that leads us, and I've seen it in the spiritual community, where people are sizing people up according to their own beliefs. And then they start, while they're claiming they're not, they're limitless and they're not this and that, they're actually putting people in boxes outside of themselves, because subconsciously, maybe they actually hold themselves still in a box, a limit, or a label.
And that's the thing. And it's like I'm just going to reiterate one more time, like labels for comprehension, fantastic. You have to have them to a certain point. It's a necessity for being human to understand what everyone's freaking talking about, right? Like, but you're not the box. You want to be aware of the box. You want the box to be open, and you want to be able to pivot your head left and right to realize there's multiple boxes out there. And oh my God, they're all within your reach. You're a limitless being. And I think that's the whole point. I think you're just meant to be limitless. And have fun with that, because that notion will take you a lot of places. Alrighty. Thank you guys so much for listening in, tuning in. Thank you for joining us on the Spiritual Roundtable, where we just really get right down in it, no BS, and we just give you exactly what you need to hear. Not always what you want to hear, but definitely what you need to hear. Thank you for joining myself and Miss Keys of Wisdoms 369 for our talk today. And we hope you join us next week, where we have more straight talk coming right your way. And if you are not a member of the website, but you enjoy conversation like this and free knowledge and learning, we have a free tree of knowledge and you should check it out. Become a member. It's 100% free, and you'll find it on www.childofbalance.com. Remember, as you go through this journey, please remember you are to feel your way through everything. Do not stop. Do not make yourself smaller. And always continue to be unapologetically and authentically you, because the world needs more of that.